most dangerous thing on Curtis LeMay's desk was not a bomb. It was a photograph that looked almost empty. February 1945. Guam. Every morning the reconnaissance prints came in from Japan. Neat stacks, target names typed on the labels, circles drawn around factories that were supposed to be crippled by now. But when LeMay looked at them, he saw the same accusation over and over. The factories were still there. The B-29s had been flying the war the way Washington had designed it. High altitude, daylight, tight formations, precision bombing. The Norden bomb site, specific factories, specific aim points, specific promises. That logic had made sense over Europe. Over Japan, it was breaking apart. At 25,000 feet, the jet stream could move faster than 150 miles an hour. Bombs released from that height did not simply fall. They drifted. They scattered. They landed where the math said they should not. On February 10th, a strike against the Nakajima aircraft engine plant at Musashino put less than 1% of its bombs inside the target area. Less than 1%. LeMay did not need a speech from Washington to understand what the photographs meant. The airplanes were arriving. The crews were risking everything. The bombs were falling, and Japan's war production was still breathing. So he stopped asking the question everyone had been trained to ask. Not, can we hit the factory? What if the factory is not really the factory? That was the thought that changed the campaign. Japan's industrial system did not look like Germany's. It was not only giant, hardened plants with smokestacks and rail yards. A great deal of it was scattered through neighborhoods, machine shops behind homes, textile rooms converted for war work, subcontractors operating inside wooden districts, small pieces of the military machine hidden inside the ordinary city. On the maps they barely existed. On the ground they mattered. And Tokyo's low city was built in the worst possible way for what LeMay was now considering. Wooden houses packed close together, paper screens, narrow lanes, shared walls, dry roofs, block after block of material that did not resist fire. It carried it. LeMay's staff began running a different kind of calculation. Not bomb dispersion at 25,000 feet, fire behavior, structure density, incendiary load, civil defense capacity, night fighter risk, wind, water pressure, the weight of guns and ammunition inside every B-29. The model suggested something the old doctrine had not wanted to see. A city could be turned into the target. And on the night of March 9, 1945, LeMay decided to test that conclusion. He did not wait for the old approval chain to become comfortable with it. He did not send the doctrine back to be debated into safety. He issued the order. The B-29s would go in at night. They would not fly at 25,000 feet. They would fly between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Under the jet stream. They would not carry their normal defensive load. The gunners were coming out. The ammunition was coming out. The saved weight would become incendiaries. The crews were about to fly over Tokyo, lower, lighter, and more exposed than they had ever been told a superfortress should fly. In the briefing rooms across the Marianas, the men listened to an order that sounded wrong before it sounded daring. They knew the old risk. High altitude, daylight, fighters, flak, long hours over water, 10 gun positions around them, a formation that gave each aircraft overlapping protection. This mission removed almost all of that comfort. No tight formation, no full defensive battery, no daylight visibility, no high-altitude cushion. Each aircraft would approach Tokyo alone,
on its own timing, carrying M69 incendiary clusters instead of the bombs crews were used to releasing against steel and concrete. The logic was explained carefully. Low altitude meant accuracy. Night reduced some anti-aircraft effectiveness. Japanese night fighters were considered limited. The missing guns gave each bomber more payload. But limited did not mean harmless. One airman later remembered the reaction when the altitude was announced. Someone near him whispered one word: insane. Nobody laughed. Brigadier General Thomas Power would lead the first wave. The Pathfinders would mark the target in northeastern Tokyo. The main force would follow for hours, aircraft after aircraft, dropping into the same crowded wooden districts around the Sumida River. There would be no comfortable secondary target, no elegant precision point, no factory roof to photograph afterward as proof. The proof would be larger than that. LeMay stayed on Guam. He had set the machine in motion. More than 300 B-29s were preparing to cross the ocean toward a city that had no idea how much of the war had just been redefined above it. The first aircraft lifted from the Marianas in the late afternoon. One by one, the bombers climbed into the dark. Not a single shining formation, but a long corridor of separate machines moving north. Inside each one, men sat behind stripped-down gun positions and bomb bays filled with incendiaries. They knew what they were carrying. They did not know what it would become. Tokyo's warning system detected aircraft approaching. At first, the response did not match the danger. The pattern looked like something the Americans had done before: reconnaissance, harassment, perhaps a smaller raid. Fire watchers were on duty. Civil defense crews were positioned. Pump trucks waited in the wards. The city had a plan. The plan was built for fires, not for a firestorm. The Pathfinders reached Tokyo and laid their mark. An X of flame appeared on the ground in the old low city. To the crews above, it meant the mission was working. The target was visible. The first waves began their runs. Bomb bay doors opened. The incendiary clusters fell through the dark and broke apart above the city. The small M69 bomblets scattered across roofs, alleys, workshops, and homes. They landed where the wooden city was most vulnerable and began doing exactly what they were designed to do. At first, the fires were separate. Then the wind took command. Ground-level winds across the district were running around 28 miles an hour, with stronger gusts. In a concrete district, that would have mattered. In that part of Tokyo, it was decisive. Fire did not simply spread from house to house. It ran down the lanes. It jumped roof lines. It carried burning fragments over fire breaks before crews could establish a boundary. Within minutes, the old categories failed. This was not a target zone with fires inside it. It was a fire becoming its own weather. The second waves could see the glow from more than 100 miles away. As they descended, the aircraft began to buck in the heated air. Columns rising from the burning city struck the bombers from below hard enough to throw them off their approach. Then the smell reached them. Wood first, then cough, then fuel and tar and chemicals, then something no training manual had named for them. The X on the ground disappeared. Bombardiers who had been told to aim at a mark now looked down and saw an expanding sheet of fire. The original target was no longer a point. It was a burning quadrant of the city. Some crews released along the edge. Some released where the smoke opened. Some had to circle for a second pass because the heat below made the first approach impossible. The bombing plan was still being executed, but the fire had become the thing in command. On the ground, Tokyo's civil defense system did what it had been trained to do. Wardens moved civilians toward escape routes. Pump crews tried to reach the edges of the fire. Fire breaks were supposed to stop flames from crossing into new blocks, but there were no single edges anymore. Embers landed behind the lines. New fires began where crews thought they had safe ground. Streets filled with people carrying bedding, bundles, children, anything they believed they could save. Roads meant for fire engines became corridors of civilians moving the other way. By roughly 1:15 in the morning, hydrant pressure began to fall. Too many crews were pulling from the same water system in too many places at the same time. The pipes had been designed for sequential emergency. Tokyo was now facing simultaneous emergency across whole wards. A sector commander in the eastern districts later described the moment the response stopped being a response. His trucks could not move through the crowds. His telephone lines failed. Fire had crossed the breaks. The maps no longer described the city he was standing in. Then parts of the command network went quiet. Not because the telephones were merely broken, because the people who would have answered were gone. The Sumida River looked like escape on the map. That night, for many families, it became a trap. People moved toward the bridges because that was where open space seemed to be. Some bridges caught fire. Others stood, but the crowds jammed so densely at the approaches that movement stopped. Those at the back could not see why the front had frozen. They pushed forward because the fire behind them was closer than the river ahead. The heat reached the bridge entrances before the crowd could clear. The river itself was not wide enough to solve the problem. Fire burned along both banks. The air over the water became impossible to breathe. Those who jumped into the March current faced cold, smoke, impact, exhaustion, and no unburned bank to reach. In later survivor accounts, the sequence repeats with terrible precision. Fire on 3 sides, the bridge blocked, the river below. A parent pushing a child forward because there was no other choice. The bombers kept coming. At 2 in the morning, late waves found a city lit from below like a furnace door. Some crews could not identify any original aiming point at all. The smoke rose, the heat threw aircraft around, and the entire northeastern part of Tokyo appeared to be burning. One B-29 reportedly took damage from material pulled upward by the violence of the fire below. 14 B-29s were lost that night. 42 crewmen did not return. For the airmen, it was a dangerous mission. For the people below, it was something else entirely. Thomas Power, leading the first wave, had already turned back toward the Marianas. From the sky, the target looked heavily involved. From that distance, no one could know what was happening under the smoke along the riverbanks, in the alleys, at the bridge approaches, inside the districts where telephone posts had stopped answering. On Guam, LeMay received early reports before dawn. They said the target was burning. They said the glow was visible for more than 150 miles. They said the raid had worked. They did not yet tell him what that word meant. The last B-29 landed at Saipan after 9 in the morning. Tokyo was still burning. When survey teams entered the Low City on March 10th, they found a place that no longer matched its maps. Streets could be traced only because they were the empty lines between ashes. Houses, shops, alleys, small workshops, neighborhood blocks, the material structure of daily life had been reduced to open, burned ground. 16 square miles of Tokyo were gone. Not damaged, gone. The casualty count moved for weeks because the dead could not all be counted cleanly. Japanese records, ward registrations, civil defense reports, and later demographic work converged on a range usually given between 80,000 and 100,000 people killed in a single night. More than Hamburg, more than Dresden, more than any conventional air raid in history. LeMay's damage assessment confirmed the military result.
The low city districts had contained exactly the kind of dispersed war production the planners' belief was there. Small workshops, subcontractors, converted textile spaces, machine tool operations tied into the larger industrial chain. The network was not a theory. It had existed. And now it was ash. That is the part the aerial photographs could show. They could show the burned rectangle. They could show the street grid still visible through the emptiness. They could show where fire stopped against more fire-resistant parts of the city. But they could not show the pressure of bodies against bridge rails. They could not show a child pushed toward the water. They could not show a civil defense post that stopped answering because nobody inside it survived.
Photographs are excellent at proving destruction. They are much worse at holding responsibility. Within days, LeMay ordered more raids using the same method. Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe. The campaign widened. The logic that had been tested over Tokyo became the logic of the final months. Lower altitude, night attack, incendiaries, the burning of urban industrial systems that were inseparable from civilian neighborhoods. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. The debate over why has never fully closed. The fire raids, the naval blockade, the atomic bombs, the Soviet entry into the war, the exhaustion of the Japanese state, the invasion that never happened. Historians still argue over the weight of each cause. LeMay never expressed regret for the March 9th order. He argued that the campaign shortened the war. He argued that it helped avoid an invasion that would have killed even more people. That claim cannot be tested. The invasion did not happen. What did happen is preserved in reports, maps, survivor testimony, and reconnaissance photographs stored in archives. In those photographs, the Sumida River still cuts through Tokyo exactly where it always did. The bridge outlines are visible. The street grid can still be followed. The pathfinders burned into the low city is not visible. It vanished almost immediately under what followed. LeMay had studied those streets before the raid. He understood the density. He understood the construction. He understood what incendiaries were meant to do inside that kind of city. He saw enough to act. And he acted. The decision helped prove that the old doctrine had failed. It also produced, in one night, the deadliest conventional bombing raid ever carried out. That is the record. And the record does not settle the final question. It leaves the photograph on the desk, a clean image of destruction, and underneath it, a question no camera could resolve.